Good morning, everyone. This is Cody Hart again. It is April 30th, and I'm here to give you another update on the 2020 election audit and my findings. And today we'll be focusing on the physical security aspect of the audit and what I have found, what I think I should share with everyone out there about what happened leading up to the election and during the election in regards to its physical security. So I prepared a slideshow I'll be narrating, and we'll go and I'll start right into it. So here we have my slideshow presentation for my update on the Skagit County 2020 election audit for the physical security update on April 30th. Everything that we're going to go over today's presentation is available on my website at codyhart.org, including a full PDF of the presentation slide materials and this recording. So first, the physical location, the Skagit County Auditor's Office, where the elections are administered for the county, and the ballots are counted. The counting equipment, all the electronics, and the security systems are located in the Auditor's Office. The elections office here approximately is on the second floor, next to the county courthouse in Mount Vernon. So also everything we'll talk today is going to deal with something that we have an elected official for. Sandra Perkins is the elected official who oversees everything we're talking about. And the main points today are the physical security findings, to review my evidence of ballot box security concerns, to review surveillance system concerns I've come across, and to review Homeland Security compliance concerns in the information I've gathered. Ballot box security concerns. This will be the first item we go over. And to begin with, most of the information here is available in public records that I've been reviewing for the last several months, and these are some of the highlights that I wanted to bring to the public's attention. So first, I think a lot of the voters in Skagit County and residents in general are probably unaware of some of the complaints that occurred during the election. And mind you, during the election. So this is an email sent on Sunday, October 18th. And this is between some residents wishing to get a hold of the auditor and convey concerns about ballots not being properly emptied from ballot boxes. The ballot boxes aren't being monitored. They aren't having adequate staff times for removal of them. And they're being expressed by the community and this voter as that they could be messed with, they could be taken. They're just at the edge of being pulled out, apparently. So this was conveyed. There was a response. And so the election official at the time, is David Cunningham, who has since retired. But he was in charge of this at the time, and he responded at that time on October 18th. But shortly thereafter, within a week, there's more discussions from other people in the county to the auditor elections office about the boxes overflowing. Again, this is a security issue. This is inadequate management of the boxes. This is the ballots aren't being properly secured after voters deposit them. And this is something that we shouldn't accept. I consider every vote should count, and there should be no chance for the kind of manipulation and altering that these residents and community members are concerned about. So another element of the ballot box security in general is what I identified in an April 16th article. As there is significant evidence contradicting state records, county records that show ballots being picked up from ballot boxes, over 1,000 I've identified in Anacortes that are suspected not to have been originally deposited there. I have had, and I know the auditor has been contacted by voters who have confirmed my analysis and confirmed that this is correct and true, and that the records are showing discrepancies between ballot boxes. So it leaves us to wonder, how are these ballots showing up in different ballot boxes than the state records, than the people deposited them say that they were in. So that's a security issue to me, and relating to the ballot boxes that I can't accept. And I want to know more pointedly, this has been out there since April 16th, but why hasn't the auditor issued a public explanation for what's going on here? I've had some casual conversations that imply that this is an internal problem with their own documentation, but I would expect this department, with something as serious as our elections, to issue a explanation, to just be straightforward with it, so we as the voters and the community understand what happened with these 1,000. I'll tell you, a great many more than 1,000 Skagit County ballots. So with that, I'm going to move on to surveillance system concerns, which is the bulk of what I want to talk about today. The surveillance system concerns were identified by me early on. When I saw during the election process that the auditor and elections office had elected to put up paper barriers in their hallways to prevent people from seeing what was going on during the election process. A lot of people are probably very familiar with my outrage at this and my inquiry into why this had happened. And so when I started looking into this, I asked for public records, and specifically I thought for sure there had to be a video surveillance system in place that would show me what was going on, because the election, when I asked for these records, the election was over. It was in January of this year, and I wanted all the video recordings to see why we had election officials concealing what they were doing, that should have been readily visible to the public. And especially since the observers during the election weren't allowed to even observe it for the first time in what I understand our county's history. So I requested this record in January, and I was shortly responded to within a day by the Gabriel Clay, goes by Gabe sometimes, who took over David Cunningham's position, that they had no camera for the area I'd been looking for. And they promptly closed my request. I will tell you, looking at it, I think that this, they knew that they were potentially putting words out there in their statements in response to me that were maybe less than straightforward, honest, by the number of people that included in my simple request. And so I then followed up. I'm a very persistent person. And I met with records personnel, and we did just a peek through the doors here together. And the elections office here, and then the recording marriage licensing offices here. Well, this is a big giant room behind this wall. And we took a look up here, trying to figure out where some of the cameras they did have would show. And as soon as we had these doors open, you will see a very large camera system hanging from approximately behind this pillar inside this room here. And so we were both shocked. And subsequently, we ended up in a conference call with the auditor and head of elections, Gabriel, and the auditor, Sandy Perkins, who told me directly during this call that the camera that I'd seen that would have been responsive, that would have shown everything I was looking for, was set up poorly, and the footage was not usable because it had glare from windows and did not capture the area it was intended to capture, making its footage useless. I was shocked. I was just shocked. And I considered that to be just a preposterous response. And so I pursued a list of all the footage they had. It took me quite a while. Don't think this was easy to get. And so what I have in front of us is a screenshot of their file system with the video surveillance camera numbering system. And I'm simplifying how hard it was to get this information from them. But here are the cameras numbered, how they categorize them in their file system, and the direction that each of these cameras go, and what they take video surveillance of. So again, first I was told there was no camera, and now there are 12. And I told you during my video conference, it seemed preposterous what they were telling me about this glare, and the footage was useless. They'd already taken it. It didn't seem to be reasonable explanation for me. So I took the map that they told me, and I had another request, and it gave me the general layout, and so I had labeled them relating to where each of the cameras were. So as mentioned, you'll see the numbers here, and I'll focus on this 60, 61, 58, and 59. These areas here are the key ones here, and 60, 61, 58, and the directions they were approximately capturing with their video surveillance. So I kept moving forward and requesting, well, which ones got deleted? If that got deleted, which ones got deleted? Because I was seeing inconsistencies in the information. And so I was eventually provided this list. And do not think that I got this on January 6th. That is not when I got this. I got this after the fact quite a bit. And they gave the dates that they had footage available, the camera numbers, and the cameras that had the key footage that I wanted to know in this lobby area that captured this entrance to the elections office. It was not within any of the records they had. And so I was suspicious. I don't think that that's unreasonable for me to be suspicious about what had happened, what I was finding, and what they were telling me. Because behind that paper in that lobby area where people would enter, the mail from the Postal Service when delivering ballots, any personnel up in this front area, what we have here, and what I see is the biggest concern, is we have an area that's a shadow area that is not being captured by any security at all. So nobody knows what's going on here. There's no record of it after the fact, and we can't see people who are coming and going from the front entrance for the elections office, which seems to just completely contradict the purpose of having a surveillance system. Yes, we would have surveillance back here where the remaining cameras were, but this is a critical area out of eyesight of what everyone could see: who's coming, who's going, who are the people coming in and registering. These are the kind of things I wanted to find out, because this is where they would be going through. And then again, was there anything that was suspicious occurring with our ballots as they entered the facility? And we have this area where we can't find out anything as a public, even though they had these cameras there. So I was very concerned about the surveillance, and that's when I came across some more records. And Homeland Security seemed like an obvious item that I would come across, which is what I did. I came across a security assessment that was done in November of 2019, and it was done specifically for Skagit County elections, in which they identified in November security concerns, a great number of them. And so I want to talk about some of those today. I'm not going to hit on everything in this list, and there's a larger report that goes with this, so do understand that. But I'm going to focus on a couple items here. So entry controls is a portion of this report that the auditor's office in 2019 was made fully aware that there were concerns about personnel having unrestricted access throughout the site, that they had inadequate security in this report's assessment, and that they needed improvements, locks and other kind of physical restrictions on the entry into the election office. So this is a major security access problem, in my opinion. It was identified in November of 2019. The Department of Homeland Security identified this as a major concern. And yet I was shocked. I was completely shocked to find out that a year later, almost a year later, that this email shows up in my records confirming from the elections, the auditor's office directly, Perkins, that they had an attempted break-in into one of the desks in licensing. Again, that's right in the same area of all of the election equipment. That's where everything in elections is. We had somebody breaking in there They were trying to get into a drawer in one of the personnel's UA's drawers, and if they were wondering if the cameras that we later found were deleted were operational. Now, mind you, they weren't installed at this time, but I was even more astounded to find that there was, after they said, and this is again the auditor, the person in charge of the entire process of security overseen on behalf of us, the public, that since there was nothing missing, and it appears nothing else appears. I want you to use that word, understand that word, nothing else tampered with. I don't think a police report, the auditor, the elected official doesn't involve the police. When the office that maintains all of our election equipment, our election records, and everything else pertinent to a federal election, which would be held, they were already sending out everything, getting ready to send out ballots at this point. It was within weeks of it. They didn't think, and she didn't think, a police report was necessary. I think the FBI might have even been necessary on this, to be honest. They don't mind investigating this kind of stuff. I think they're there for stuff like that. But besides that, I guess you could have a lot of faith in the Skagit County Sheriff, but they don't even involve them apparently. And they move beyond this. And this is a major, major issue for me. I think everyone in this county should be aware of this. Is what our election auditor, elected official, thought was okay at the time. And whether they ended up involving the police, I don't have a record of that. I'm assuming not. No one's heard of this. I guarantee it. I've never heard of it. I couldn't believe it. There was a break-in in our elections office while they were putting together ballots, while they were accumulating mailing lists. We don't know what happened. And that's the problem. And they didn't bother to involve law enforcement personnel who could tell if there was equipment that was tampered with. We just don't know. So I move forward now in the Homeland Security report. They had another glaring item that is, again, the center of this particular audit report. And this is the need for CCTV. They say back in November that, hey, you don't have adequate or any, from my understanding, CCTV surveillance in your elections office. And so that was an obvious recommendation that I was a little shocked they didn't have installed, but mind you, that's fine. It was back then. And so we already know that they did end up installing it. But I want to point this out, that internal communications going into November confirmed that the meeting federal requirements for the video surveillance was 22 months. And that and I know this, but I'll just summarize it, that when you deal with federal elections, there is a retention policy for 22 months for all election-related materials. And this is the internal staff at Skagit County having correspondence internally, including the auditor, confirming they know 22 months. We're supposed to have all these federal videos relating to federal elections for 22 months. And so some might say, well, might be confused. Well, there's no excuse, because they go further and they talk about this after I start talking to them. Internal communications, the state election documents are 18 months, 18. Mind you, I did my records request and found out that they deleted everything from almost all of October. All of October, most of the ballots had been processed in and out. All their operations that would have been really critical most of it really would have occurred in that October, in my opinion. But everything's critical, so there's a lot in November. Not only did they delete a great majority of the critical cameras, and remember, the cameras that catch that front lobby area don't even exist, but they deleted almost all of October. And then we see in here, it wasn't an accident. They've been asked to eliminate it. So internally, they made the decision, even though they had the duty to know their retention records, had to be 22 months for federal elections and 18 months for state elections. So again, as someone in this community, as a voter, as somebody who expects my elected officials, my offices to follow state laws, federal laws, and common sense, I'm very disappointed, and I consider this a major concern. Let's add to this. So let's talk about the security system in general. So I mentioned it wasn't there in 2019, according to what we're reading in the Homeland Security recommendations and concerns. And that's consistent with what I've seen in other records. And here you'll see a Skagit County Commissioners meeting for the June 15th of 2020. You'll see that the county and the auditor's office, working with the Secretary of State, they acquired $170,000 for security improvements. This enhance election technology and make election security improvements. So it seems straightforward. These security cameras that they were installing, that they didn't have installed in time to catch people who broke into the office, but then they had them installed during the election, were paid for by more tax money, not just 10 years ago money, but very recent money. Help America Vote Act, okay? This security improvement, $170,000, but then they go ahead and shortly after the election, they start deleting all the records on that. So I consider that just completely unacceptable, and I think there's some real accounting for what's going on here, because none of this makes sense, and it doesn't follow what we, the public, would expect from our government officials and our representatives. So let's talk about the findings here. So ballot box security concerns, they're justified. I've shown you, we have documentation that proves ballot boxes were not properly maintained, ballots were put at risk, and there's been unresponded to concerns of ballot box conflicts in the state records that could impact over 1,000 Skagit County votes alone, and that everyone in our election office is staying quiet on. We have surveillance system concerns that are justified. We have video surveillance that is being destroyed. It's being eliminated, their words, from relevant parts of the election process for critical elements that show things that we cannot prove otherwise, and that are in just contradiction to common sense. Why we would be deleting these? And the records seem to conflict all over the place on why this was happening. And then we have our Homeland Security compliance concerns. So we have federal agencies providing security recommendations that our elected officials are ignoring, that there should be, and I think they were fully aware personally, that the retention of 22 months and 18 months, how can you have this job and not know how long you're supposed to keep records? This is your job. This is what the auditor's office does. They maintain all the records. So I think these are very major findings in the physical security, and that we in Skagit County are justified in having concerns about the physical security of the 2020 election and what happened. And it brings into question real doubt about the legitimacy of a number of things. And I think our elected officials need to answer for that. I think there needs to be more investigations into this, and especially when it comes to break-ins in our office, our government offices that deal with elections. I just don't consider this acceptable, and I want to know why that was concealed from us as a public. And so that's my update for today on the 2020 election and my audit on the physical security of the Skagit County elections, the ballot problems, the surveillance system problems, and the security compliance issues I found. And I just don't accept it. I don't think most of you out there will. I think it's inadequate, and I've just got no faith in how this stuff is being managed. We need to have a better process and have more faith in this. And I think there's a lot of questions that still need answered. And I think we need to hold those responsible who aren't doing their jobs up to the level that we expect. And that way we can all have faith in the results when we get them.